Vanmôre hier in die ateljee is Raphael en Jade Tomé. Nou, hulle is reeds wel bekend in die skoonheidsindustrie. En ons praat vanmôre spesifiek oor haarverlies, want daar's mos nou, kyk, roosmaryn en byram en wat s'ie ander goeters, 'n aartappel na die maan geblaas, gevryf op jou kop. Dit was allerlei goedjies wat nou hare kan laat groei. Maar as mense moet praat oor dit wat regtig saak maak en hoe dit eintlik werk, dan is hulle mos nou die mense om mee te gesels. Raphael and Jade, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for having
Lovely
me.
having you in the
is
studio. Let's start with
absolutely
the basics. People are losing their hair. Why? Why do people lose hair?
Very simple. So there's 3 reasons for hair loss, and you know, we basically, I like simplifying things, right? So we literally just talk about 3 reasons why we lose our hair, and the reason why I do that is because there's patterns that come along with this type of hair loss. So if you're losing your hair from a genetic point of view or from hormones, then it only happens on the top part of the scalp. If it's all over the scalp, it's generally from medications. And then if it is in patches, then it's from a medical condition. But to boil it down to one thing, it's a disruption of hair growth cycles.
Wow.
Yeah.
Speak to us about those hair growth cycles. How does it work?
So your hair sort of goes through cycles that basically complete itself in 2 years. And these cycles are every 3 to 4 months, you go through a shedding cycle. So what happens is most medications, what they do is they basically interrupt these cycles and you start sort of forcing more hair into a sort of a telogen phase. What that means is a falling phase, a resting phase. And so when you go through hair loss through medications, for that matter, what happens is that accumulates and you can lose up to 50% of your hair in a very short space of time, which is anything from 2 weeks to 2 months. But medications, funny enough, only showcase hair loss after a year or 2 years. So it takes a while for these things to actually sort of manifest inside the body and obviously showcase themselves, yeah.
So when I like take my hair and there's like a few extra strands here and there, that's normal,
Completely
right?
normal. So you should be losing anything between 80 and 150 hairs a day. That's the normality of it. But when it gets disrupted, you could actually see up to 300 hairs fall to the ground in a very short space of time.
And you will obviously immediately feel that
Yeah.
and realize, okay, well, something's not right here.
Correct, yeah. It's not normal. So, you know, hair loss is not a normal thing. It's your body telling you there's something wrong. It's your body's alarm system to tell you, look, I'm not happy. There's an underlying issue here. And that's why, you know, my approach as a trichologist, JD she's been with us for such a long time. She's my wife, by the way. And we've basically been working together for such a long time. And she does all the marketing and that type of thing, you know, for the brands. But when it comes to me, I'm the trichologist that basically consults with people every single day. So when I look at my patients, I consult with them in such a way that we look at their lifestyle. Because when I mention lifestyle, it's not just the way we eat, right? There's 3 underlying things that we look at. And number 1 is minerals, because it's the most important thing when it comes to any form of disruption in your physiology. That's not the first one. So minerals is by far the most important. And then the second one is your gut biome. You know, we're talking about the gut where your biome basically, they're actually referring to the gut as a second brain now. That's how important your gut is. And then the third one is diet. So what we consume and give, because you must remember, why do we eat? We only eat for energy. That's what we eat. That's why we eat. So depending on what your body does with that energy will depict what gets left behind. So it's either acid or alkaline. So we also look at that part of the lifestyle if you take that into consideration. And that's how we approach hair loss. So you've got to get the fundamentals right, because even you can use all sorts of stuff, Bayram or all the things that you mentioned, looking at the sun or looking at the moon or whatever the case may be.
The potato.
Exactly. And all of those things are never going to help if you don't have the fundamentals right. So even with our products, you don't want to put a Band-Aid on stuff. You know, we want to try and create you got to find the causes, and those underlying causes is what we need to obviously identify. That's why it's so important to get a diagnosis.
We're not even talking just about men losing their hair. It's about ladies losing their hair as well, and excessive shedding when the follicles die.
So they only die through a genetic disposition. So we've got to understand that what causes that is a genetic, it's a genetic disposition. It's something that happens through your genetic code that basically allows the body to effectively sort of interrupt the signaling pathways to that little hair follicle. So what happens is through a disruption, once again, but it's a genetic disruption, and it's a hormone called DHT, which is dihydrotestosterone. It's testosterone. Testosterone by itself is not a bad thing because that's actually, it grows hair all over the body. So it's a byproduct of free testosterone, which is an enzyme. That's the genetic part to hair loss. The other one is prostaglandin D2. No one ever talks about that, which is it's basically a protein in the skin, on the scalp. So people that are balding, men and women, both go through this DHT process and both go through this prostaglandin D2 process where basically this protein is elevated by 3 times in balding men and women. And both of these interrupt those signaling pathways. So they're basically telling your brain that the little hair follicles come to the end of its life cycle, therefore it doesn't come back again.
And that's on the scalp?
It's on the scalp, and only on the top part of the scalp. And the reason why men and women lose hair differently is because men sweat in pockets predominantly more as opposed to other areas. Sweating is one of the biggest contributing factors to hair loss.
Wow.
Because it's a carrying agent of these hormones.
Raphael Tomé en Jade Tomé kuier vanmôre by ons selfs bietjie oor haarverlies. Ons praat hier onder andere oor dat dit verskillende redes is. Dis geneties, dis dalk die kos wat jy eet, dis dalk jou gesondheid, dis dalk medikasie. En mans en vrouens is anders. Raphael, male hair loss and female hair loss is essentially different, but it's been treated rather similarly.
Yeah, over the last few years, I think that people have only treated it in the exact same way. So whatever they give men, they give women. And it shouldn't be done that way because a woman's physiology is completely different to a man's physiology. So when you're talking about supplementation, topically, it all works the same because you're working into the little hair follicle and you're dealing with the situation at hand. But when it comes to the physiology internally, from a supplemental point of view, you've got to be able to supplement differently because a man has a prostate, a woman doesn't. And so you can manipulate a man's body when it comes to hair loss through the prostate. And one of the big things is there's many ingredients out there that basically actually assist. And funny enough, men that have a benign prostate disorder generally have something to do with hair loss if they are genetically programmed, obviously, to losing their hair. It definitely is related. Oh. And so the things that we utilize, the herbs that we utilize, generally sort of shrink a sort of an enlarged prostate and it actually helps with hair loss.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
Have we seen an increase in hair loss?
So not only have we seen an increase in hair loss, but youngsters are starting to lose their hair from the ages of like 13 now. Women are starting to lose their hair from they're literally going through a process where I think that the youngest girl that I've ever sort of consulted with, she was 20 years old, already starting to lose her hair genetically. So this is based on not only what we're eating, but that lifestyle that I spoke about. So those 3 things that we mentioned. And then obviously, one of the biggest pandemics that have come across now is obviously hair loss, but it was from the pandemic. So things like, COVID as well as the vaccines are definitely causing a lot of havoc within this realm. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite shocking. You wouldn't even think about a 13-year-old. And here's the thing, we always think about it physically, losing hair, but psychologically that must have such a massive impact on people when they start losing their hair.
Especially a woman, because it's like 2/3 of her face. So, it's something that with a guy, and, I think the perception has definitely changed. I think youngsters are definitely doing something about it now. Yeah. Where in the past they would just kind of shave their head and it was kind of manly. But I think people are definitely concerned about it, and it is something that showcases whether or not you're healthy or not. You know what I'm saying? There's something there, and especially with regards to women. But
can I ask this? Because you often, like he spoke about the potato and blowing something to the moon or something, but often you also hear about people who wears a lot of hats or caps or whatnot also suffer from hair loss. Is that true?
Well, it's actually something that Raph touched on earlier, is that sweating is one of the major contributing factors. And when you're wearing a hat or, sweating underneath, you're actually adding to the problem. So indirectly, yes, wearing hats unfortunately does add to the problem of hair loss.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, luckily I don't wear hats, as you can see. But now let's talk about treatment, because what can I do if I start losing my hair? If it's genetic, that's the way it is.
There is a management system you can put in place from a genetic perspective. So it is something that people just they kind of just turn and they shy away from a genetic disposition, and then they say, well, there's nothing that we can do. It's just going to happen. but you can actually do something about it, depending on how quickly you sort of address it, right? So because of these hair growth cycles, normally, and this is very interesting though, your eye picks up whether or not you're thinning. And the only time it picks that up, because if you look at, so for every square centimeter, your eye has to see 100 hairs. If it starts seeing less than that, and generally it's around 70 hairs within that little square centimeter, that's when you start doing something about hair loss, because that's when your eye actually picks up that you're thinning. And so it takes a while. I mean, if you consider that's 30% of your hair that's already gone by the time you actually start doing something about it.
So genetics, you have to do so. But if it's medical,
that's completely reversible.
If it's health reasons, if it's supplemental reasons, not getting enough minerals.
Yeah, find that cause, and generally you're not just putting a Band-Aid on it. And then this is something that I always tell my patients as well, is that people go through hair loss relapse, right? So they do something about their hair loss, it gets better, and then they stop using products or whatever the case may be, and that underlying issue hasn't been solved, hasn't been resolved, so they go through this hair loss relapse 9 months, a year later. And it's because they're not dealing with that cause that obviously is causing this hair loss.
Yes. So the first thing you guys would recommend is find the cause, deal with the cause, and that's the main thing. And then you obviously have supplements, not homemade remedies. Yes. There are actual supplements that do help you.
Correct. Yeah, look, and the interesting thing is that, you know, these home remedies, like there's a lot of things that people do, and what it does is it creates a better environment on the scalp, and it feeds a distressed hair follicle with nutrients and nourishment. That's what it does. It's not going to solve the problem. You've got to look at that underlying issue, find that, and then you can solve the problem with a topical solution.
Where do people go to find help with hair loss? Because let's be honest, do I go to my doctor? Where do I go to?
So, funny enough, doctors are great, and they've obviously learned a hell of a lot of stuff. They don't specialize in hair loss. So it would be a trichologist. That's where you go.
Trichologist.
A trichologist, yeah. So, I offer, consultations, and that's something that we do. And it's something that we do for free. We don't actually charge for that. And it's something that we do because this is the way we give back. We've got a very successful business and we do really well. We've gone overseas now and we started our international footprint. We're actually going to the States at the end of this year as well, so we can start our footprint there as well. And that's where Jade comes in. She does all the marketing, and she's the backbone of the brands. Yeah. So we do have products that generally, assist. And let me tell you that we are very successful in how we solve hair loss, and it's because of our approach. It's not just, just use the shampoo and then all of a sudden you're going to get your hair back. No, we look at it holistically.
Holistic approach, yeah.
And behind every trichologist, there is someone, a beautiful wife and a clever wife to support them, of course. Jade, how's it been supporting Raphael in this journey?
Oh, it's been such a wonderful journey. I think that, Shame, I'm actually feeling a bit emotional, but I think that watching Raphael over the last 10 years now, not only assist people, because I think that something that we touched on earlier was that it has such an emotional impact on people's lives when they start losing their hair. And not only seeing the journey of how they recover from that, but also how they actually blossom and bloom as a result of taking his advice and, taking that journey. And it's such a fulfilling role to be able to just stand by him and just see him help so many people. So, yeah, I think I'm very proud of him.
That's great. Making a real difference in people's lives. Thank you so much for joining us this morning and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
Ja, Jade en Raphael Tomé. Wat 'n lekker storie om te hoor. Daar is hoop. As jy hare begin verloor, moenie jou kop verloor nie. Daar is hoop.